When a client disagrees with you, how do you manage that? On the one hand, they have hired you so that you provide your perspective, so that you help them get good results. But on the other hand, they're a grown-up. You cannot be bossing them around. And if you try to make your best case for something and they decide that this is not for them, they don't believe that your recommendation is to be heeded, then who are you to, continuously nag them about this? So how do you strike that delicate balance so that you don't destroy the relationship and you also hopefully get them great results? I've worked with over 200 clients in my business, and I frequently get good feedback on how I manage these types of situations, that I'm being very respectful about it. And so maybe this will help you solve these kind of problems in your own business. My name is Michael Bohannes. I help consultants and B2B agency owners build client acquisition systems so that they don't depend on referrals. And of course, because we work with plenty of clients, we get on average one new client a week. We have to manage those relationships. And sometimes I tell my clients things that they don't want to hear, that they maybe disagree with. So I need to manage that relationship. And so here's what I've learned that works pretty well. So first of all, we have to cover two foundational elements, two types of attitudes that you need to have in order to navigate these choppy waters successfully. The first one is humility, especially when you're early on in your business journey. Accept that you actually might be wrong and your client might be right. See the disagreement in a productive light and just say, okay, great, we disagree on this. You're the boss. Let's ultimately go with your recommendation and see how that pans out. And so the earlier you are in your profession, in your line of business, the more light-footed I would be with my convictions. And by the way, convictions are a pretty bad idea in business generally, because unless you've seen something work all the time without a fail, it's not really something to be held as a conviction. For example, I'm very positive that simply spamming large corporations with a relatively high ticket offer is generally not a very good idea. I'm open to be convinced otherwise, but that is like a default way of how I see the world. Well, in a recent sales call, one of my prospects actually showed me their emails that they have been sending, and they are very bland emails, nothing really special about them. They're sending them to relatively big businesses. They're getting like a 1% positive response rate, which is not high, but given that they can just scale them, they're not personalized. Well, personalized with just name and company name, but there's nothing truly where you need to personalize it. You can just use wildcards for that. And they were getting a 1% positive response rate. So I always need to couch my convictions, as strong as they might be, always in a little bit of a caveat. Well, of course, the earlier you are in your journey, the more of this kind of humility is necessary. And foundation element number 2 is patience. Again, if you are relatively early in your journey, this will happen more often. Now that I'm already 7 years almost into my business, this is happening less and less. And so just be patient. Gradually over time, the faster you become really good at what you do and the better results you will be seeing for your clients, the less this will also be happening. And so with these two foundational attitudes set, here is the process that I take when my clients disagree with me. And those are very 3 simple steps. But before that, if you found this video interesting so far, if you're intrigued, then please do me a favor and give it a like, leave a comment so that other people can also find it and benefit from these insights. All right. Now, what are the 3 steps? Step 1, really try to understand why your client is objecting to you, why they're disagreeing. Don't just accept the first response at face value, but really ask the famous 5 whys, to truly dig below the surface properly. Now, that may be a little bit daunting. They might get a little bit upset with this, but always couch it in, listen, I just really want to understand. I hope that's okay with you, because I want to understand if the reason for the disagreement is something in my approach, whether it's specifically what I recommend or whether there's anything more fundamental. Please indulge me and tell me, why do you disagree with this? The reason why this is so necessary is because if you don't do it, then in your mind, you will start straw manning them, which means that you will assume the worst possible reason for why they want to do it that way. Oh, the crappy company culture, or this person is lazy, they just don't want to work. And that, of course, is not very conducive for a positive collaboration. So you want to stay away from that. You don't want to be attributing reasons or motivations to them that are not accurate. Step 2. And this is where the real magic happens. You say something along these lines. Okay, John, we disagree. No problem at all. I just wanted to tell you this is how I approach these kind of situations. Just so we have it completely clear. I find it's really useful that people know how I tackle these situations, because it's not the first time that this happens. So the way I propose that we do it is that I give you all of my reasons why I believe that your approach is, my opinion, suboptimal. I'm just going to go through all my reasons. I'm going to make as best case as I possibly can because I know that I have one shot. If after this explanation you still disagree with me, then absolutely we will do it your way. What I only propose is that we just keep a note in our notes document, in our running diary, where we just note this, that on this day we discussed this, and then I laid out my arguments, you laid out your arguments, and then you decided to go in this direction. I'm going to do all of this. You don't worry about it. Is this okay with you? Okay. And like this, you just lay out how you tackle these situations. You show that you have a structure. Now, this approach is really effective because, first of all, you are treating them like a grown-up. You just say calmly that you disagree, you give them the reasons, and then you, of course, tell them that they ultimately are making the decision. Second, you frame it as, this is how I work, which suggests a great level of professionalism because, of course, you've been there before. You want to handle this kind of situations productively, and this is what you present to them. It casts you in a professional light and shows that you understand conflict management. And it's also effective because you also have this conflict sort of spelled out, written out with arguments clearly made. You can, of course, ask your client to look over it so that they feel appropriately represented. You don't have to write a big essay, just quickly write down the main points. And you have it then for posterity so that you can then, if at some point the situation comes up that you can say, I told you so, that you have a diary entry of when that happened. And step 3, and this is the hardest part, avoid bringing it up. Especially avoid bringing it up in a nagging way where you say, hey, I told you you should be doing this. No, you've discussed this. This chapter is over, and it's just going to be there for posterity just in case they start blaming you for the lack of results. But that's basically the only reason why it should be there. You can, let's say after a good time, what you can do with it is maybe 6 to 12 months later, you can bring it up, but not in a way of, hey, remember that time when I told you so? Not a good idea. And it's a perfect example of this. I once had a client, she completely refused to do any scaled outbound. She was just relying on content and doing a little bit of conversational prospecting with people who came her way. She simply didn't like the idea of being salesy, as she described it. And she also thought that approaching people, especially in her industry, would considerably lower her status. So she just refused to do it. And at that time, I didn't even make a note in our document. I only came up with this relatively recently. And it wasn't even necessary because after about a year of our collaboration, where she started to see poor results because of the lack of scaled outbound, we were just talking. We were still on very friendly terms, and she asked like what she should be doing, and I brought it up again. But I didn't bring it up again in a, remember, I told you this is the result. This is because you didn't do it. No, that's not very good for any kind of relationship, and especially this one. But what I said simply, how about doing a little bit more scaled up on where you just approach new people? And then I couched it in a story that I've learned where I said that I was also doing too little. And my own coach told me, hey, you're doing too little in terms of outbound. You need to increase your cadence and so on. And she just took it. She said, yeah, actually, good point. And she started doing scaled outbound and it all worked out fine. So in summary, the recipe is humility, patience, setting your boundaries, sharing your modus operandi, being professional about it, documenting the disagreement, and especially don't nag them. Ultimately, they are the boss, so it's not really much you can do about it. But as long as you heed these signposts that I just outlined for you, you have a very low likelihood that there will be any further conflict on this very topic. Cool. I hope it's going to help you navigate those choppy waters of client conflict and client disagreement. If you like this video, again, be great if you could give it a like and leave a comment. What did you get from it? Was there something that you didn't expect? Or maybe do you have a better way how you handle conflicts? Please leave it in the comments. I'd be very grateful. Thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you in the next video.